I'm Kyle Roderick. I'm a journalist for Forbes. I also write and photo edit jewelry books. I'm moderating the panel on AI and how it's affecting the jewelry industry and everybody who works in it. So I'm going to introduce Dr. Jack Ogden, who is a renowned jewelry historian, expert on the history of jewelry making and so forth, and Eve Peitzner, who runs the Studio Tisch here in Munich, which is how would you describe it? Introduce yourself.
An experiential design studio.
Experiential design studio. Eve created this Timeless Brilliance exhibit over here, and we're going to start talking about AI. And so let me lead off with the first question. Many designers and manufacturers tell me they're afraid that using AI may somehow dilute, standardize, or even damage the integrity of their collections. They're also afraid of what it might do to their consciousness. And what do you think of this fear? Does it have any basis in reality? Why don't you take it away, Jack?
There are so many misconceptions about AI and what it can do and what it can take away. I think most jewelry designers, certainly most jewelry companies, are using AI now to some extent in the design process. Not necessarily to produce a final design, but to give inspiration. You produce 50 designs, or AI produces 50 designs. That'll say, well, that's a nice idea, I like that. So there's still the human part of it. I think it can greatly increase the creativity of any designer if they use it the right way by looking at it and using it as inspiration. Designers will go out in the countryside and look at a bird, the trees, whatever, and get inspiration for it. And it's exactly the same with the sort of designs that AI can. It can come up with things you never would have thought of in your life, which can give great inspiration. So I think it's actually a very positive thing. And of course, the end thing is what the customers at the far end of the supply chain think about the jewellery. And generally speaking, customers, I don't think it's been tested in the jewellery industry, but in other fields of art, customers actually prefer the AI art to the human-produced art. They find it more intriguing or more entertaining. So I think they're right to be frightened of it, but that shouldn't stop them getting involved, adopting it, and experimenting, really, because it is part of life now. It's not going away.
Okay, your take on it, Eve.
Well, yeah, I agree with Jack, and also I think it probably changes the role of the designer a little bit. The designer becomes probably more like, also with generative design, which is like the thing which happened before AI. AI is also a generative process, so I think it changes the designer's role, becoming more like a curator rather than designing yourself. You can choose out of a 50, 60,000 designs if you want to in like 5 minutes, but you still have, the human still has to take the choice or make the choice of the design he wants to produce. So if you're a jewelry designer, and design a ring, a bracelet, whatnot, it would probably give you so many designs, but you need to choose. You're the one to then make it into something. So I think it's the human-machine collaboration, which is becoming more important. But, having said that, it's always been like that. AI is just a technology which we, should embrace and use. And of course, it has negative effects just as positive effects. It's like, you can take a knife, you can prepare food with it, but you can also stab somebody. AI is, any technology is pretty much the same thing. And I think as a designer, it's great. I think it's fantastic, and it gives you a lot of possibilities, a lot of inspiration.
But what are the negatives? I think it might be worth elucidating some of the negatives.
The negatives, I think, is that for me, it's more the negatives. It's for artists, what the AI is trained on. So, for example, if you do an image generation, what is that trained on? We don't know. So it would just take, let's say, I want to create a painting in the style of Mark Rothko, for example, right? So was Mark Rothko asked to be trained, that his art is trained by, as data for an AI? I think that is the negative effect, because nobody's being asked, Same with facial recognition, for example. It's always a lovely example for any, facial recognition was in the 50s, 60s, in America. That's where it started, where you have computer vision, and you would have to have hundreds of thousands of, images of human beings, so our computers say, oh, this is an eye, this is a nose, this is a mouth. And at the time, they didn't have, much data. What did they do? The only big database, on faces was mugshots, from prison.
Of course.
And
Yeah.
till today, the training data of facial recognition is still mugshots. And, still, even they're criminals, but they still have human rights, and they were not asked, can I take your
That's
face?
right. That's right. And how about you, Jack? The negatives. You want to discourse
Well, I
on
just
that?
like to come back. I mean, this is the big worry. You're taking AI has been trained on, Rembrandt and Rothko and everybody else. Yes, but would you also ban art students from buying art books or going around galleries and taking notes and sketching paintings and getting their ideas for that? I see no real difference. In fact, I think for an art student to sort of go around on a Rothko exhibition and get wonderful ideas and take lots of sketches and go home and produce something of that style is far more copying Rothko than it is AI that's taking billions of images and distilling something out of it there's no conscious thing that the AI is doing. So I think that's a fallacious argument.
Yeah, I guess, but I think it needs to be brought up,
Oh, it's true. Yes, it needs to.
Because in the end, we all,
Yeah.
every designer, every artist steals somehow.
Yeah, of
We get
course.
we look at, as you said, we go to a gallery or something like that, and you do something in the style of whatnot because something inspires you. In the end, something new comes out of it, like AI does.
Yeah,
it just
exactly.
takes a billion
It
images.
just does it faster.
It just does it a lot faster.
And usually better. I was going to say, I can't remember what it was. I was going to come in with some other point on that. Oh, yes. I think a lot of it comes down to is that things like jewellery schools really need to bring AI into the teaching, not necessarily in preparing the teaching materials, which is happening anyway and will happen,
Right.
but to prepare students. What questions, because what they call prompt engineering, what do you ask the AI? If you want to get a design,
Exactly, because
you have to be trained in that.
many jewelry design and gemology students at gemological institutes in the US and Europe who I've interviewed in the past year, they report to me that in their curricula there's too little instruction regarding how to use AI. And they're like, we need to know, and they're not telling us.
100%, yes. That's why it's scary to people, because it's an unknown thing to
Right,
people.
right. And they don't want to get too far behind because then it's too much time to try and catch up, and they haven't gotten the skills. So, question, what can students and young professionals do on their own to become more knowledgeable about how to use the potential benefits of AI?
Well, just experiment and try. AI is essentially, there are some paid subscriptions, some of it's free.
Right.
And even the subscriptions are relatively inexpensive. And just try it.
Are we
Play with-
talking, when you say relatively inexpensive, can you possibly name a euro number?
Not really.
yeah.
The image generation thing I use is Midjourney, which I think is one of the better ones for this sort of area. And I think it's $20 a month or something.
Okay,
roughly.
and it's called Midjourney?
Midjourney, one word.
Okay.
I use Gemini, which is part of Google, and I think that's now free to all for Gmail users, or certainly a lot of them.
Excellent.
And that's amazing. And in fact, just this morning, I thought as an example, I asked it to write instructions telling a student why and how to use a refractometer and a gemology thing, and it came up with the most beautiful description of refractive indices and how refractometer worked and why it was important. So there's a lot of you can learn from AI.
Very good. And your take on it, as far as, because you also teach, Eve, correct?
I do, yeah. I teach at the University of Applied Sciences.
The University of where?
Applied Sciences here in Munich.
Okay.
And so the study is computer sciences and design, so both, which is very interesting. So I do this, I'm a guest lecturer basically, and I do a project with my students where we use an AI model, but to create a spatial installation such as that.
Okay.
But we, the curriculum's usually to ask a question, how can AI improve the, say, environment, for example, or how does AI influence the environment? to ask a question like that. So it's more like asking a question and then have an exhibit about it. So at the same time, they learn how to use AI models and whatever they want to do, but also be critical about it. And I think that's very important to ask critical questions, because we take AI for granted, it's all great and so on, but the societal impact it has, the economical impact it has, needs to be addressed, because say ChatGPT, OpenAI, they use so much energy to create this algorithm. They use thousands and thousands of hard drive GPUs.
Yes.
This uses so much energy. I don't have the exact numbers now, but it's insane.
Are you trying to say it's not sustainable? Are you trying to say it's really
so not sustainable?
Really bad for our environment?
It is quite. I mean, we do a lot of things which is bad for the environment, but it doesn't add. It's not like it solves all the problems. At the same time, it can help us solving the problems, but it's like, you drive a car and it's bad for the environment because you have exhaust pipe, except the electric, but also an electric car has a lot of impact on the environment. So these are things I think we should address with AI, and it's really important, such as training data, for example. As we just chatted before, ChatGPT is basically trained on the whole of the internet. So we all know that 95% of what's in the internet, is a whole, pile of baloney, basically.
It hasn't been fact checked. It's not evidence based. It doesn't hold up. I mean, like extraordinary claims, or in fact, any even standard claims have to be verified and validated with more than one source. So, yeah.
I mean, just thinking, combining that with a negative impact. I mean, away from the educational side, imagine a case where a gem dealer, say, gets a phone call from his wife saying, help, this has happened at home, or whatever, there's an emergency, whatever. And so he heads off to somewhere to meet her, or wherever he's supposed to be told to go by her. It's not his wife. His AI has generated her voice, generated a phone call, knows all the background, and can sound. I mean, this has happened to politicians already. They get phone calls that they think are from certain people, and they're not. This will be so easy. This will be done in
and then the gem dealer gets robbed, right?
The wife, I'm outside in the car park, it's terrible, I've lost the key, whatever. Oh, I'll come down, dear. It's not the wife at all. It's two thugs with a, So there's all sorts of impacts of AI that are not limited to the jewellery industry, of course, but they need to be thought about by people in the jewellery industry, particularly the security side, because jewellery industry is particularly open to robbery and things. So we're dealing with very small, very precious things. So it's a whole area that needs discussing, and people prepared for it and taught about the worries.
Or maybe that's a new book for you.
I'll get AI to write it.
I'm also wanting to ask how the advent of AI for jewelers in less developed parts of the world who may not have access to these technologies, is that going to, do you see, as a historian, in the broad sweep and the fullness of time, is this, how is that going to affect, like let's say there's a great goldsmith or designer in, I don't know, Borneo, but they don't, how is this going to affect the more less developed cultures?
I think it's, I mean, if you remember the early days in the 90s when the internet was just taking off, and half the jewelry industry thought this was the worst thing in the world. You got the CEO of Tiffany apparently saying, basically, over my dead body will Tiffany ever sell online? This is not that long ago. Things change. I think in a way, I mean, going back to the 90s, the internet, you could have a shop, you could be based in your garage, with a computer, or you could have a Madison Avenue shop. And I think it's the same with this. I mean, if it's free with Gmail, I could be in in a village in Sumatra or something. I still have access to it. So I think it's a great leveler. I don't think it's a separator. I think it's a huge leveler.
Right. What do you think, Yves?
Well, actually, I think some of these countries are even more, more digital than we are. I mean, especially Germany is like digital, a little bit behind in digitization.
Germany is behind in digitization?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you look to Asia, for example, they're like light years ahead of us, because they're not so afraid of using that technology. In Germany, everybody's like super afraid of, personal privacy and all this.
And identity theft and that sort of thing.
And data protection is a huge thing in Europe in general, which is good. I mean, Europe, regulates AI at a certain extent, which of course stops the the development a little bit or hinders it. On the other
Right.
side, it's necessary. What's happening in America at the moment, I think it's like, ooh, no regulation whatsoever. I think that's can be dangerous. It probably will be, because then you can just do, like Jack just said, theft, robberies, whatever, can be, easily done. But yeah, so, but I think in these countries, they're sometimes much further, a step ahead.
Yeah, I
from
have
the
noticed that.
Western
I've
countries.
traveled, like for instance, in New Zealand, they were, years ago, they were ahead of many places in the States in terms of how they were using computers and programming and coding, and really interesting, because, they're at the bottom of the world, they feel isolated, and so they, very savvy, very digitally savvy. For any retailers, they also, who I've interviewed, have said, I don't understand, how can I use this to optimize my sales? How can I use AI, to help me plan a better business, short term and long term? Can both of you take that question up?
I mean, marketing organizations and marketing individual consultants are using AI all the time now. It can give cutting new ideas for marketing. So the first thing for a jeweler business is to ask AI, how can you help me? What can you do? What sort of things? And I've never yet asked AI a question that what part of the answer doesn't make me think and say, oh, that's a good idea. So you'll get some feedback from that. I think the jewellery trade organisations, from something like CIBJA, the international one, right down to the sort of the local jewellery industries, should be addressing this thing and helping their members get. I don't know how many are, but they should be helping, giving guidance and ideas to their members. I think that's an important part of what they're doing, or should be doing. For retailer, I mean, sales, I remember, for example, I was in the jewellery trade. I joined the family business when I was very young. I escaped as soon as I could, but I was in it for a time. And there, you get somebody coming around with a suitcase with diamond rings. And my father would say, right, a 3-stone diamond ring. Have we got one in the window? No. In the case? No. We always have a 3-stone diamond ring, so we better buy a 3-stone diamond ring. So there's no idea, if we haven't got one, but had the one we sold been in stock for 10 years and we sold at a reduced price, there was no joined up thing. It's just as a gap in the stock. Now, in a much more wider thing, you can actually, AI would be in a position to work out your sales, what sells better. Yes, 3-stone diamond rings sell, but on average they turn over once every 5 years, and whereas a single stone turns over once every 3 months. Therefore, put your money into this. So, that's a very trivial, but you increase the dimensions on that by what the general trends in the world are, what the trends in society are, what the fashion trends are, and AI can combine all this stuff to provide a much clearer idea of what should be selling and what doesn't, in what way your inventory can stand out. Now, this is very early, but this is exactly the areas that the trade associations should be getting involved in, because this is beyond the average retail jeweler to start looking into AI.
Absolutely.
But something like the trade associations really should be helping. Like they used to have the buying groups and things. I don't know if they're still using those, but that sort of thing, where there's a group of people in the trade combining ideas of how they can really make this work. But it has to be a consensus in the trade associations. I think it really has to come from that at the retail level.
Eve?
Yeah, what's to add on that? I think also AI is terribly good at analyzing big data. So,
Yeah.
What humans cannot do, what maybe 10,000 humans would do in 10,000 years, AI does in like 1 minute or less.
And
So,
also,
if
are you talking about predictive analytics too?
Yes,
in
correct.
terms
Or,
of
market data,
Right.
sales data, or, give me the last 20 years of sales in the diamond industry, for example. And, can you give me a prediction on, what to focus on, for example? Or in retail as such, there's many ways you can use AI. That's maybe a bit controversial, but perhaps using a facial recognition in some sort. When people look into your window, for example, you can probably analyze what's that emotion, how long does this person look at that thing and that.
Oh, wow, that's that's cool.
What do people do,
Yeah.
or where people move inside your shop. So like analyzing the behavior of people or stuff like that. So for analyzing, I think artificial intelligence is good. Of course, people don't be too pleased, especially in Germany, if somebody would, have a camera in your window.
They're tracking you.
Tracking every face or something.
Like it's a science experiment.
Exactly, but it's being done more than one thinks, and probably in the future, in retail, I will be able to ask this glass of water, where do you come from, where have you been sourced, and so on, because that's a big problem. We had a discussion yesterday that the knowledge of the staff in jewelry shops, is very limited. So if a question arises, does this gemstone come from, or this diamond, or where has the gold been mined, there's usually a big question mark because, either they don't know or, they don't want to say, and so on. So these kind of things can be sort of solved with technologies like blockchain or something to trace stuff. But also, in the shop, you just ask, like ChatGPT, you can just talk to it, on your phone, and it gives you an answer. So why not, give it, an answer to a product? You don't necessarily have to an unknowledgeable shop person. Although, having said that especially jewelry industry is very, very personal, and I think that's probably why not so much innovation happens in there, because it is this, yes, I talk to another person, I try it on, I want to feel, I want to see, I want to, all this kind of stuff. But in this exhibition, for example, we've been, trying to think about how do we display the jewelry. So we 3D printed some, special displays, very, very simple. But then I realized, oh my God, there's not much innovation in this sector, for example, right? So we looked at Maximilianstraße and the very high-end jewelry shops everywhere. But if you look around, everybody displays jewelry the same way. There's almost zero innovation. If you go to the hall where they have the displays, they're all the same. There's 3 or 4 different things, and there's no innovation. So I think AI can help with that. Just give me an idea. How can I display my jewelry in a more creative way, and so on. Give me a nice 3D printed sculpture where I can put my gold chain, which acts like a river in this landscape, or something like that.
Right.
So I think there's many possibilities where AI can be helpful.
Go ahead.
Can I come back to one of the earlier?
Yeah.
You're talking about design. I think one of the problems, I tried the other day. I mean, I in preparation for this, I asked just on my phone, Gemini AI, I said, come up with a totally innovative idea for a jewelry design, for a designer sort of jewelry, for a man or give a woman or whatever it happens to be, to show they love them. And it came up with several ideas, most of which were rather stupid. But one idea was quite clever. Is say something like, I love you, and then have the sound, the waves you get when you speak, have that in 3 dimensions made into a piece of jewelry. So the jewelry literally says, I love you, or some other phrase. And the trouble is, though, I don't know if somebody's done that.
They have.
Yes.
Solange, Azaguri, Partridge.
That's what I was coming to. Has that been scraped from somebody else's idea, or is it a truly innovative one?
Well,
so
it's funny that you bring that up, because I was going to ask, there's another issue related to jewelers, designers, retailers, and the emergence and power of AI. People have said to me, well, there's so much greenwashing and so much basically fraud in the jewelry industry marketing. Is AI, how can we use AI to better find out or determine the relative veracity, the relative truth of claims that are being made? Can you talk about that?
I mean, this is one of the problems. It's got to a stage now where it's not possible to distinguish, not in every case, but it is possible to produce an image, a text, a video, or a voice that is impossible to know whether it's AI or not. And
so we're really vulnerable, is what you're saying.
Yes, this is going to take a whole new way of thinking. It needs ongoing discussion. I mean, across the whole of society, not just in the jewelry industry, but certainly the jewelry industry, because it should, as I say, back to the trade associations, the international ones, to work out what is the best way to guide people through this. Because it's going to be, things are changing enormously, and we don't know how they're going to change. It's almost more unpredictable than any past technology. I mean, they invented the steam engine, hundreds of people out of work. All these things happen, but you could actually see, if you're a clever person, you could say where this is going to go. It's just replacing a certain task of a human being, creating power, and we can see what that's going to be used for. But this, we don't know where it's going. So it needs very careful thought, a lot of discussion, and approached with, I think, excitement and trepidation, and it's good and the bad.
Is there perhaps an opportunity, do you think, Eve, for cultural ministers, of different countries to maybe come to some kind of consensus about how, like for instance, we have the India Pavilion here at Inhorgenta. They're very much, it's a government-sponsored trade organization. So how should they be involved with these AI issues and talking to their, talking to their biggest manufacturers and their biggest,
it's funny.
members.
I was just working on a project designing some installation for the new Mumbai airport.
Oh, Mumbai Airport. Okay.
And so I kind of dived in a little bit in the whole Indian culture and stuff like that. Having said that, I've never been to India myself, but so I had to do a lot of research, which I do on every project I do, obviously. And there was this funny story coming up that at the election, people got a phone call, a direct one from Modi, which was AI generated, but it was his voice addressing that particular person, calling them and saying, "Hey, vote for me," and so on and so on. That was so. India is pretty far. They're really quite far ahead in technology.
Yeah.
You get a lot of IT people from India. The programmer, in schools that gets pushed quite a lot there. So they're really quite advanced. But I think for cultural ministers, the problem is knowledge about AI. I think that's whether the cultural ministers are really the right people to educate them is. I'm not so sure. I would not trust the German government, to be honest, to be super advanced, knowledgeable about AI. We don't, really. I don't see it. At least I may be wrong. So yeah, it's a difficult
it seems to me that there's a potential for new governmental roles, like I'm the AI, cultural committee or something.
Absolutely.
Like a gatekeeper or a watchdog, or I don't know.
There should be, yeah.
Yeah. What do you think,
I'm not sure
Jack?
how that can work, because...
Neither am I.
Because, I've got good news. In every country of this world, crime has been made illegal. That means we'll have no more crime, right? There's always going to be people that find their way around these things. Yeah,
of course.
So I think if we just come back to the worries, the downside is the long-term one. For example, gemological laboratories are using AI now in things to identify inclusions and things in stones and all this sort of stuff. Now, but this, you still need a sort of a senior gemologist to look at the results and sort of say yes, no, hang on, no, we need to read this.
Right, because sometimes the senior gemologists say, hey, this is a fraudulent inscription that was applied,
or whatever.
Right.
So, it's like then they use AI and robotics in surgery now.
Yeah,
You still need a top surgeon to look at what it's doing and to oversee it. But when that top gemologist or the top surgeon retires, you won't have had his successor come up doing it the old hard way. So this succession is a huge potential problem in AI.
What you're saying is we have all this information, but we're losing expertise and knowledge?
My sort of particular little niche is jewellery history. So I can look at something, let's say Wikipedia, and look at that and say, no, that's bullshit, to put it politely. That's wrong. They got it wrong, or they're misquoting that, and whatever. But when I get hit by the proverbial bus and stop, somebody who's done their whole life learning jewellery history from what's available online won't be able to spot those things because they won't have done the hard work, if you liked, to really know the subject. So I'm not saying how brilliant I am. I'm just saying there's
right. But specifically,
problem.
You mean they haven't gone to historical document sources? Is that what you mean?
They spent most of their life relying on what they're fed.
Yeah, because younger people like in their 20s, I have a son who's 26. Yes. He has read very few books.
Yeah, but also,
even though he was sort of classically educated at a boarding school. It's amazing how fewer books they've read.
It's more than that. It's been looked at seriously in the surgery side, but trying to translate into gemology. I'm a gemologist. I'm the sort of the Dr. Kubelan or whoever is top gemologist somewhere. I'm looking down my microscope, and he's got the people who work for him around and say, "Hey, Fred, look at this. Do you see this inclusion? This is what this means." So, but when the chief gemologist is just looking at AI results and everything, he doesn't have this same interaction. So he's not, if you like, a sort of kind of apprenticeship doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
And that's being taken out of a lot of the education, or will be, by AI.
The whole idea of what the Italians call the master's touch and the master's skill.
Yeah.
Yeah. Eve,
Well,
chime
there's
in.
good news on this one. Because,
Okay, good.
Good.
I think so. The bad news is also, we get more lazy. Of course, with my students, they just, research something quickly on ChatGPT or something, and they do their work super quickly. But but they don't work on it, or they haven't achieved or mastered some knowledge. So that's the downside. The good side is that humans become much more important. The human touch, the human result, as you just said, it needs a human to verify all this. So, like we discussed before, I don't believe anything in the internet anymore. Zero, nothing. No, absolutely not, unless I know it's from a source I trust, right? And that even becomes difficult. You mentioned before, there's a lot of even news outlets, who don't fact check their stuff. So
Facebook doesn't fact check anymore.
Maybe New York Times. I don't know. Do they?
Yeah.
I do believe them, but they also use AI. But so I think the human becomes more important because of all that, we don't know if it's really true. You want to have somebody who has a knowledge, a master knowledge to certify a stone, or who says yes, this is good quality or whatnot. So I think that is the good news of all of this.
But to pursue it a little bit more, I'm worried about the death of expertise that's been experientially gained in jewelry.
Not only there, yeah. Do you know the movie Idiocracy? I don't know.
Of course.
Yeah, so that's like plays in the future.
Of course.
Whoever hasn't seen it, but it plays in the future where humanity became incredibly dumb, and
Well, it was very prophetic.
in a way, sometimes I think, ooh,
It's super
is it
prophetic.
already there, and
Yeah.
AI may be an accelerator to that, actually, because we become lazy, we don't fact check, we just believe, like my parents, for example, say, oh yeah, I've read it on the internet. It's like, where did you read it? Yeah, Facebook. So, oh my God. Yeah, did you Google it? Yeah. What was the source? I don't know, but it's true. It's like, no, and
The famous line, I did my research on
Exactly,
the
yeah.
internet.
Yeah, exactly. And which site did you? I had a lot of discussion about, in the COVID time, because they say, oh, vaccine is this, that, and and what was the funny part where Bill Gates does, nanobots into the vaccine and stuff like that. Where did you get that? And I had this, these conspiracy theories, but that's what fueling it, and I think that will affect the jewelry industry. It will affect pretty much everything, really, and like in America, what's that? Donald Trump, truth well told? No, what's the
Truth Social?
Truth Social, yeah, exactly.
Right.
What social? Especially with Trump.
Yeah.
Where the president of the United States can just blatantly lie on television and everybody knows, and in some ways accept it, and AI doesn't really help with that because you just check something, okay, you believe it, and yeah, that's probably the big downside on things, but the upside is the human being becomes super important again.
There's another interesting thing happening, which is already happening. I mean, I presume some of you use Uber occasionally, or equivalent sort of taxi things. Now, you will, your trip and who does it is sorted out by AI. There's not a man, a sort of taxi, what do they call it, sitting in a shed somewhere like the American movies. Yeah. This is all done by AI. Which cab is best, blah, blah, blah. You then grade your driver. You say that driver's a good driver. So I give him 5 stars, 4 stars. And if a driver gets less than a certain number of stars over a period of time, he's out of a job. So have AI firing people. You can be fired with no human intervention. So that's going to create problems for the courts. I mean, can you be fired in an organization in Germany by computer program?
That's a really good question.
Actually, in Germany, it's incredibly difficult to get fired because the employees are very protected by the law. So you can't just, like in America, you can't just say you're fired, go. That's not going to happen. It's literally almost impossible.
It's the same thing in France too.
Yeah,
I understand
yeah,
it's
very
quite
similar
well
to France, yeah.
regulated.
Yeah, incredibly regulated, which is good for employees. It's sometimes not so good for business owners who may have a bad employee and then want to get rid of him. It's very hard. Good example: my brother, he runs a restaurant, and he found out that a long-term worker for him was stealing money for over 20 years, and it was like 100,000 euros. And he installed a camera, but in Germany you're not allowed to install a camera you're allowed to install a camera, but you cannot use it in court because it's, as evidence because it violates your privacy. So he actually had to pay that worker. I mean, of course, he fired him because he was stealing, but he couldn't prove it in court. So he had to pay this guy because he was working there for 20 years. Even had to pay him like
A severance fee.
A severance fee. For that he stole for 20 years. That's how protected, we are in Germany, which is kind of weird. So sometimes I wish there wasn't an AI for that, but yeah, it's crazy. I'm not sure how AI could do that. I think in Germany would be great, an AI which could cut bureaucracy a little bit and, or cut through the clutter and analyze all that stuff. What could we do, to improve, the complicated law system and all the bureaucracy we have, how can we just improve on that? And I think that's what AI could be super good at. Also, as I said before, analyzing data in the jewelry industry for retail, for pure research. I think that's what it's great for.
I
want to come back to AI.
Yeah. I also wanted to ask because some younger people who don't quite these gemology students and like bench jewelry students who I've interviewed, they're very worried that AI is going to somehow damage aesthetics or damage the whole nature of jewelry design and popular global taste. Is that something you can talk about at all, Jack?
Well, I think we're back to the thing of what is jewellery for and who is it for? And I think it really comes down to a designer obviously feels protective of their designs, their creativity, their spirit and all these things. Of course they are. But the end of the thing, the proof of what happens is what the consumers like. And I know in other fields in art, when put to a public, which do you prefer of these paintings? It was actually the AI ones that scored far higher than the human ones.
Who did that study?
I don't know.
That's
I can give you the reference.
That's really interesting. Yeah.
And I think with
we need to do that with jewelry designs.
Well, I think
put forth and see if they prefer the AI jewelry.
Yeah. So the thing is, if a customer likes the piece and says, "I really like to wear this," or this expresses my love for my partner, or whatever it happens to be, then that's the test of whether it's a good design. It shouldn't really be in the mind of the designer. Because the designer is creating a product for somebody else to like. And if they don't like it, then it's not a good design. I'm sorry, that might be sort of heresy in some areas, but I think that is the judge is the customer, not the user.
No, I understand. And I think that's probably, you can't argue with it, can you?
People have.
People have. What do you think, Yves?
Yeah, I think, as I said before, designers should embrace it, and I think every designer is already using AI for inspiration or whatnot. I don't think it's going to take away. I think for the people who say, "Oh, I don't touch it" or something, they will have a problem for sure. The other day, I was a friend of mine. He makes like caps, like baseball caps, and he makes these designs, and he has a graphic designer who refuses to use AI and stuff like that. So I was on a holiday, visited Mallorca, where he's working from, and so I just overheard this conversation with this graphic designer saying, we need a Viking ship in the sea, please look for stock images or something like this. Well, I was just doing Mid-Journey and emailed him the image. He's like, "Oh my God, where did you find it? It was perfect." It's like, well, then use it. I just did it with AI, and this graphic designer was like, it's just like he needs to embrace it. And I think he got not fired, but if you don't think in a forward way, in a more modern way, and use and embrace technology, you will be left behind for sure. So I think yes, there's downsides and upsides, but certainly in design, I think it can only help and maybe even enhance your process, make it faster, as you said.
Yeah, the time element is really something to consider.
Yeah, and that's great. I mean, I use AI a lot. I'm not very good at writing text. I mean, I write, concepts and stuff like that, but, sometimes it's a bit clunky, let's put it that way. Then, just ChatGPT, please brush it over, and it sounds amazing. And then you have to edit it again because you usually can, for example, read, if it's written by ChatGPT because there's so many empty words in there, and it's just like, it just writes, blah, blah. And so it's, a lot of empty stuff in there, but it's so fast, it's faster than, for me at least, for me, writing a perfect text takes a long time, and at least I have somebody to help me to do this speed up this process like tenfold time, I still have to edit,
Right.
And I think that's again, the role of the designer or artist changes a bit because we become more like a curator if the human-machine relation, if you cooperate basically, right?
Yes.
So if you have, I could have like 20, say, trainees or co-designers or something like that, and then I would go around as a chief designer, and just I like this, and this you can now do by yourself more or less because you have an AI for that. By the way, there's a great website that's called There's an AI for that, and it's
called There's an AI for that.
Yes, and
okay, take note.
Yeah, it's really cool because you literally for any kind of need what you want. There is an AI for that. A year ago, I tried to create a ring completely with AI. So the whole process, like not only design process, but also the manufacturing process, the 3D, and get it to a 3D printer, and so a human shouldn't touch it. It doesn't work yet. Yeah? AI is not that far. It's not very good at creating 3D designs, for example, out of a 2D image, and make it so that you can actually 3D print something. A 3D printer, okay, it's a machine, yeah, you can do that, but, to set a stone has to be done by hand, and, things like that. Or, so it's not there yet, and, it won't replace, but it speeds up the process so greatly, and I think that's...
Is it not there yet? But, I mean, if you can do very delicate microsurgery through a robot, or with AI, then, I mean, it'll be able to stone set. It might not be now, but you think, I mean...
A few years down the road, perhaps.
I mean, a couple of years ago on this very stage, I gave a talk on an AI in the jewellery industry. And I think it's fair to say that quite a lot of people in the audience barely had heard of AI, and even fewer were using it in any form or other. But I would guess that most people here have at least played around with it to some extent. I mean, most people I talk to in my life have at least tried AI. And that's just in a couple of years. I mean, most technology has taken far, far longer to develop. And things you say, we can't do this, we can't do that. Give it, I mean, a matter of months, a few years, we have no idea where we'll be, but it'll be certainly ahead of where we are.
Oh yeah, maybe only half a year or something, it'll be doing it. It goes faster and faster and faster.
A book I've read said one thing to remember with AI is that the AI you're using now is the worst AI you'll ever use.
That's right. Well, with that cheerful conclusion, we have run out of time. Here we go.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much
Yeah,
indeed.
thank you. All right. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.